Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Talking Real Estate with Champions Real Estate Team here, Berkshire Hathaway Home Service Ambassador Real Estate Company. My name is Mark Wehner II, team leader here, and joining me today is Russ Williams with Williams Mortgage. So we jump on every Wednesday, give you a rundown what's going on in the marketplace in the Omaha kind of metro area. We also talk about what's going on in the real estate industry, quick tips, all that kind of fun stuff. So today we're going to talk about what's happening in the real estate industry, some rumblings of what's going on from the Zillow giants and the Redfins of the world. So things that you as the consumer, buyer, seller, just the general public may not see what's behind the scenes. Well, Zillow made an announcement, recently. I don't know if it was this week or last week, but they are basically not going to have all of the active listings on their platforms anymore. So what do I mean when I say that is basically they came out and the MLS and NAR has changed some rules on how us as agents can market properties. So we have an opportunity to that. Say you have a seller that doesn't want their house on Zillow, publicly out there, and maybe they don't want people to see, their house and all that stuff, and want us as agents to kind of privately market that property within our brokerage with to other agents and other brokerages that we can reach out to that maybe do a lot of business in that neighborhood, in that area, in that price point. And we can go out there and work for you as the seller to sell your house to the most amount of buyers that we know, and we can target and market those buyers or those agents that we know that can sell your house. Well, Zillow has said, since, well, now agents, if you're going to do that private marketing, we are not going to allow that house to be on Zillow anymore permanently. So anytime you say you cancel that listing and go active on the market to be an active listing to go out to all the syndications, i.e. the Zillows, the Redfins, and that type of thing, we will not, Zillow is saying we are not going to put that listing on our website. And so that's kind of like they're scolding the agents for doing what the sellers have asked us to do. And so from a buyer's perspective, when you're the buyer and you think, oh, I'm going to jump on Zillow, which is, the largest website out there that most buyers are comfortable using, you will not be seeing all of the actual active listings in the marketplace. So what does that mean for you as a buyer? Well, you may see a sign in the yard out there, but you're like, well, where's that one at? Why isn't it listed? So you're kind of, that's a confusion to you as the buyer, the consumer out there. That's why it is very important to work with an agent that is up to date on what is going on in the real estate industry, that we can get access to all of those, listings that are out there. So that's the one thing that, used to be, before I got in the business and right when all the internet started taking over and all that stuff, that the agents were quote unquote the gatekeeper. They had all the listings. They had the MLS books back when my father was in it, my grandfather in the real estate industry. And so you had to have an agent, and we would basically see what was on the market and we go, hey, this is a great house for my buyer. We'd send that to them, or we had sellers. We go, hey, I'm going to go out, I'm going to drop off flyers at all the offices, and that type of stuff. Well, now, we have emails and all that, so we don't have to run around, drop off, flyers and such. But the key point here is that Zillow has made their stance in the industry of not having all of the active listings on the MLS. And so from a consumer's perspective, I guess if I'm a consumer looking to buy a house, I want to know what all the houses are. Yes, I can go on maybe Zillow or Redfin or things of that sort, but you're not seeing all of those listings. So that's why it's important to work with an agent, interview agents and say, hey, what's your marketing strategy? How are you going to find me a house, in that regard? So I think that's just one of those kind of industry changes that we see on on the realtor side of everything, but the general public out there, they may see a blip on an article of Zillow not, cooperating with agents in that sense, but they're trying to hold our feet hostage as agents, going, well, your sellers are going to want this on our platform because we're the largest, real estate website out there. Well, that's great, but the thing is we also have it on MLS that we know the true buyers that are working that are looking for houses. We know the agents that are working with those buyers, and we can specifically go out there and market that house. From a seller perspective and as a buyer perspective, we're going to stay in our own kind of ecosystem, I guess, when you look at it from that perspective from the MLS, because those listings are still going to be on the MLS. They're just not going to be actively syndicated out to the third party sites. And so that's a choice that, when you sit down with us here at the Champions Real Estate Team, when we're getting ready to list your house, those are the tools that we have in the toolbox. Do we want it to go out? Do we want to syndicate it out? Do you want to keep it kind of like a private listing where we can market it to our brokerage, and then we can also reach out to other agents, in the Omaha metro area or wherever your house is being listed at in Nebraska to target market those agents and say, hey, we got a house here in Midtown. I can go back and I can look and see in the last 6 months, who are the agents that sold the most houses, or who's the agent that had the most listings in that area? And I'll pick up the phone and call and say, "Hey, got a listing, on Underwood. Do you have a buyer that's looking in that area? Oh yeah, great, we do. Boom, boom, boom. And then you're playing matchmaker. You're creating interest and activity for that house as a listing agent, and those are things your agent should be doing anyways. For your listing instead of just we have you kind of talk about in the industry, list it and leave it. Well, I'm going to put a sign in the yard and hope it sells. There are, agents out there in the industry that may do that, but you gotta, when you're interviewing agents and they're interviewing you as well to make sure that you're a good fit, both of you together, and know exactly what you're getting in that avenue of it. So I guess summarizing essentially what Zillow came out and said is they're not going to have all of the active listings on their site anymore. So that's one thing that as a consumer, that you need to know that. And, if you're actively looking for a house right now, reach out to your agent. Hopefully, if you would love to work with you here at Champions Real Estate Team, but there obviously are a lot of great agents out there in the industry, but just ask them that question. Hey, am I getting all the listings that are actively on the market? And make sure that you are in that sense. And if you're not, reach out to us here at Champions Real Estate Team. Happy to help you. We can go over all the tools in our toolbox from a buyer's perspective, from a seller's perspective, and make sure we have a good fit. Get that playbook tailored to you and what you want, on your goals and home ownership and that side of it. So awesome. Let's rock and roll with what's going on in the marketplace. Do you have anything to add to that, Russ? I don't know, from a
No,
lender's
I
perspective or
think
anything
that's
you
spot
saw?
on. It's very important to work with a real estate agent, as opposed to somebody that's in a faraway place that doesn't know the market very much.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Let's jump in here as we pull it up. So number of active listings over the last 7 days, like I said, like to keep you guys up to speed. What's going on? We had 695 new listings go live in the last 7 days. I think that's the largest we've had. I didn't go back and look. Yeah, we haven't had that. So in January we had 675. Yeah, if I go further back in here. Yeah, it's almost back to last. Oh. Yeah, we're back to June. June 26th of last year, we had 724 listings go live. So yeah, I got a whole book here of all this data that I put on here. So anyway, so like we said, spring's getting nice. You got Easter weekend coming up here. So that's, I always find holidays are hit or miss. Because sometimes you got people coming into town, for that holiday weekend, maybe buying. Then you have some people that are doing family stuff, barbecues, all that kind of good stuff, and they may not be doing it. So it's hit or miss on that side of it. But like the weather's nice, very typical this time of year. You're seeing a lot of listings go live. So 695 last 7 days, 481 new contracts written. So that's basically what we had last week, 488. 316 happy new homeowners that closed on their house in the last 7 days. So congratulations to them. So, we're in a pretty typical spring market here. We're seeing some of the, multiple offers. We're probably, I just had a mastermind meeting last Friday, and then we had our sales meeting yesterday with the whole company. In our mastermind meeting, that's what we're kind of talking about. We're probably seeing on houses that are ready to go, ready to rock, maybe 4 to 8 offers, nothing crazy. We're not seeing the 15, 20, 30 offers, craziness like that. But, I think interest rates, over the last couple of weeks have been very volatile. And even with the market, the real estate or the stock market and stuff, going up and down so much, people have kind of maybe taken a little bit of a breather, just to kind of wait and see what's going on, let the dust settle a little bit. But the thing is we're still seeing appreciation. So even though those rates may be fluctuating, going up and down, we're still seeing that appreciation. We've talked about that multiple times on here. So if you've watched our videos, you kind of know what we're talking about there. But let's jump in, look at a 30,000 foot view here. So similar, what's going on? So we had 3,106 active listings in the Omaha and Lincoln MLS. So that's the entire kind of eastern Nebraska area, listing there. 1,771 Douglas Sarpy County, so that Omaha metro area. 843, that number is ticking up a little bit. We were down in the 700s about last week. And then the new construction is dropping a little bit. So we're going up in the existing and new construction. A lot of those foundations and some of those spec homes were dug back in November. Those ones are starting to go under contract. They're not necessarily, they're still kind of building, but they're selling the inventory that they've been getting ready for the market for this spring market. And that's why that number is more going down than it is coming up because there's not a lot of new builds being started right now. Yes, there are the customs and stuff like that because a lot of people, the most number of pendings for new constructions, typically that February and March, those 2 months are like one of the top 2 months throughout the year because people get done with the holidays. Hey, we want to build a house. How long is it going to take? Sometimes 9 to 12 months. Okay, well, we can try to get in before, if they have kids in school. A lot of times our goal is to get in by that August timeframe. So they may start breaking ground in December, January timeframe in that regard. So months of inventory 2.8. So we're still in that seller's market. And when we are going to go list a house, we're going to look, that's the entire market at that 2.8. So if we're going to list a house in the 400s in that specific neighborhood, we want to see what the inventory is like. So we'll exactly see what the months of inventory in that area, what's the average days on market, how are we going to price it? We look at the showing activity. So if they use a showing service like Showing Time, we can jump on there and see the number of showings that are actually happening in your subdivision if the other agents and other listings are using those showing services. So a lot of agents don't know you can do that, but that's how we can, really strategically price your listing in the largest pool of buyers in that regard. So, and then average sold price 341. That one's kind of been hovering there the last couple weeks. So nothing too crazy on that, up about 3% from last year. So, any questions? I guess you can ask questions on it. But yeah, if you have questions, comments, obviously you can put in our comments section there. But let's jump in with Russ here. I know we've had a lot of volatility in the market and all that kind of fun stuff. So he usually keeps his finger on the pulse. So what are we seeing out there, Russ?
Mark, you hit it right on the head. We are seeing continued volatility. 75 to 80% of all residential sales are financed with cash. Financed. The others are financed or are bought with cash. And what we've seen is there has been a little bit of pullback among some buyers. You'd mentioned not long ago we were seeing 10, 15 offers on well-priced and well-shown homes, and now that number's dropped off a little bit. What this means is there's an opportunity for you. With interest rates moving like they have been with the tariffs, with that instability, some people have gone to the sidelines. This is a great opportunity for you in the event you're wanting to buy that first or next home to get in the marketplace and buy it at today's rates, today's price, and always refinance it if the rates come down next year. We don't know that they're going to come down. If we take a look at a 40-year history of what mortgage rates have been, we're sitting right about what that 40-year average of rates is. So, given that Mark had just mentioned that there are 4 to 8 offers perhaps on a well-priced, well-shown home, do you think that home price is going to go down when we have that much demand with supply remaining low? Probably not. Meaning buy the home at today's price, and at today's rate, we can always refinance that down the road. So, having said that, though, tariffs, we did put some tariffs on China. We backed off some of the tariffs on some of the other countries. There's a 90-day reprieve on that. I expect we'll see some continued volatility, but the markets have calmed since last week and mortgage rates have settled back just a little bit. It's not likely we're going to see mortgage rates drop unless we see inflation risk come down and job losses can start to rise, and that hasn't happened yet. So having said that, we have continued disruption. But as long as you've got a stable job, good income, and want to or need to get into that next house, do it now. We can always refinance it down the road when rates do come down. And oh, by the way, Mark, it's quite likely, given that you're seeing 4 to 8 offers on a well-priced and well-shown home, that there's likely going to be more appreciation in that home over the next 6 to 12 months than what the cost of a refinance would be. So I encourage you to stay in the game, buy the house today, and we'll refinance it later when rates come down.
Yeah, and what I've also seen I keep track with my clients, that bought in the last probably 4 or 5 years, maybe they only put 5% down, maybe they only put 10% down. With how the appreciation has gone the last couple, over the last couple of years, people have the private mortgage insurance on their or the PMI. And so that's an additional payment that they have on their monthly payment. Well, once you get 20% loan to value on there, then basically you read that 20% of equity of the value of the house. So that house goes up $50,000 or whatever over the next 5 years, a couple of years. I had a client that they bought, I think in 2019. And by 2021, I called them and I said, hey, you're pretty darn close. And she only put 5% down. I'm like, you're pretty darn close. I go, probably within the next year, you should probably hit that 20% threshold. And she's like, what? Are you serious? I'm like, yeah. So in 3 years, that's supposed to be on there for, 7 years or something. I mean, it's different on everybody's amortization schedule. but that loan to value, because it'll automatically drop off on your amortization schedule. But if that value goes up faster than what that amortization schedule and what you're paying down on your principal every month, you can basically call it, was it, reevaluate, or what's the term where you um,
Are you talking recast?
not recast, but like to basically have them get that PMI off of there.
Oh, an escrow analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, they just do an escrow analysis and say, all right, hey, your value is okay, great. And then you're saving yourself, $100 a month, 150, depending on what that PMI is. And so those are things to keep an eye on that as agents, our agents, we kind of hopefully try to keep track of that. I send out quarterly market analysis for that. And so what I can also do is say, oh, hey, when you bought your house, you put 10% down, your value that you need based on the numbers that I'm showing is going to be right around, you need a value of 300,000 and we're at 290 right now. So maybe in the next year or so, see what some things sell, and then you can use those comps to basically go back to your loan company and say, hey, I think we need to basically reanalyze this to see if I can get that dropped off. And it may cost you to do an appraisal. So if it costs you $500 to do an appraisal or whatever, and you're going to save $150 a month, so in 5 months you're breaking even. So as long as you're not going to sell the house in the next 5 months, it'll save you that money in the long term. So, but rather than waiting an extra 2 years for the lender to say, oh well, hey, it looks like it's time, because they're not going to take that. They're not going to be working in your favor to get that to give you back your $100 a month. So, but anyways, yeah, it's probably a little longer video than we normally do, but yeah, I really just want to keep you guys informed of what's going on in the marketplace and all that good stuff, and just the environment of of the home buying and selling process, and what you're searching out there, making sure that you're working with an agent that's going to get you all the homes that are actively listed. Here at Berkshire Hathaway, we have a pretty laundry list of broker exclusives. So what that means is basically those broker exclusive listings is basically they're listed within our brokerage. Those are not actively out on the marketplace. But like with those rules changing, those agents are now able to basically reach out, to other brokerages and advertise that to other brokerages or to other agents. But if you're not in the confines of the Berkshire, one of the largest we have the largest market share. We have a lot of those broker exclusive listings that we can kind of tap into, and from have more stuff that's off market, I guess, for all intents and purposes. So, but anyways, appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, comments, like, subscribe, share, all that kind of fun, happy nonsense that every people out there say on the social media world. But we're just here to provide you information. Love to hear from you if you have questions, comments, things you want us to cover. If we don't know it, we'll find the answer for you. I have a great relationship with the real estate commission, so if there's any kind of those type of questions, we can get on the horn with them. I'm teaching a real estate CE class today at 1 o'clock, so we keep everybody informed, and we're out there educating the agents. So if you have questions, give us a holler. Happy to help, and we'll see everybody next week. And